Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Rosales, and I am doing my case brief on gun safety at sporting events, whether it's youth, collegiate, professional, all of the above. I believe that the majority of you in here will be doing your case brief, which is under the B contract. I might see a few legal cases in here. I don't know which presentations I will be seeing, but I am under the B contract, and I did mine on gun safety. Professor Saban allowed me to do that, and I was able to kind of deep dive into a lot of these cases that regarded anything and everything that has to do with firearms at a sporting event. So, with that being said, this is my case brief explanations. Before I do begin and start to break down each one of my case briefs, I just want to tell you that sometimes the camera angle is going to be a little bit off because I have a little bit of different information on each different slide. So my camera angle might be at the top corner, might be at the bottom corner, the size of it. So hopefully that doesn't affect you all too much. But as long as you kind of get the main concept I'm trying to get across and you see my explanations, that's all that matters. So in detail of my way back then, my very first case brief that I did at the beginning of the semester, it was over Joshua Wade versus the University of Michigan. This case isn't necessarily taking place at a sporting event, but it takes place on a university and state-funded campus. And with that being said, before I get into all of my case briefs, I just want to let you know, this was kind of a difficult, so to speak, topic to kind of find specifics and a lot of information on. And hey, I think that's a very, very good thing, because if you're having a difficulty in my end finding a lot of cases when it comes to gun safety and gun issues at sporting events, that means that they're doing a really good job at preventing these issues from happening. Obviously, I don't want to kind of go on that, but we have had many shootings in our country within the last few years, but that doesn't go along with my case briefings that I've been doing. So it's good that I did have a little bit of a hard time finding a lot of this information, because these sporting events, whether it's, like I said, youth, collegiate, or professionally, have been done very, very carefully. And also on top of that, looking into the safety of the spectators and the staff is very, very utmost priority. So with that being said, like I said, Wade versus the University of Michigan. Michigan banned all firearms after adopting Article X in 2001. It was just to kind of keep the environment safe, all right? That being said, the law enforcement and security was the only people allowed to have firearm possession. I think that's a given. I think everybody in here can kind of understand why they are the only ones allowed. It's to keep the peace, keep the safeness for all those around the campus and the university. Joshua Wade had a permit for concealed carry, but he was not involved on campus. What I mean when I say not involved on campus, he wasn't a student. He did not graduate from the school. He had nothing to do with the University of Michigan. He didn't live there. He wasn't a student. He had nothing to do with the University of Michigan, but he did have a concealed carry and was just trying to kind of, I guess, push the envelope to be able to have that concealed carry on that campus. He did apply for a waiver to be exempt from basically Article X applying to him. He just kind of wanted to go about, hey, I want to be able to have this concealed carry weapon on the campus. Nothing really wanting to stop him. He just wanted to go about it to where, hey, this wouldn't apply to me. Going on, once he did get denied of this waiver to be excused, he did sue for the violation of his Second Amendment rights, which is the right to bear arms. The Michigan Court of Claims then granted the motion for summary disposition, which then kind of progressed into the Michigan Supreme Court, then vacated a prior appeal and remanded after the Bruin-based review. For you that do not know that, it was just basically a deep dive into the laws, the bylaws, all of that being said, in order to make everything remain structured. After the remand, the ban was upheld, and therefore, as we can kind of understand, he was not allowed to carry his concealed weapon on the university property. So, deep diving into our case brief, number one. This is, as my last slide, I just told you basically everything that kind of went from beginning to end, all the details of it. Now, just to kind of read between the lines, you've got the relevant law, which is the university property, the use of firearms are strictly prohibited outside of the law enforcement and security. I think that's kind of just understood as to why that's the case. We discussed that in the last slide. And the use of the Second Amendment and the Bruen test were definitely involved in this case when it comes to sport law. Second Amendment was kind of used to hopefully the aid of Joshua Wade, and then the Bruen test was kind of used in the favor of the court. Those are the two different perspectives that we were able to see in sports law. When it comes to the court ruling, we kind of discussed it in the last slide, that it was definitely constitutional to ban the use of a firearm on the campus. And the reason why I put the Pandora's box would have opened is because if they would have absolutely banned, lifted the ban and allowed him to have that concealed carry, it definitely would open the door for many people to also go about the same process, and who knows where it could have gone. It could have had hundreds and hundreds of concealed carries, and sometimes not all people think the same. I think it just makes it not a safe place anymore, and it might kind of tarnish the reputation and the image of the university if they let all these people walk around campus with these weapons, even if they go about it legally. When it comes to historical context, like I said before, ensuring the safety of the faculty, staff, and students are basically the utmost responsibility, and basically the number one priority is to maintain an area of safeness for all of these people. When it comes to the landscape of sports law, it shows that only in extreme conditions, which I really can't think of any that would be applied outside of law enforcement or people that are staffed at the university. I think that would only be the case in extreme conditions to where this rule wouldn't apply to specific people. Can't really think of one at the moment, but just to kind of allow people to voice their own opinion and go about it in a legal way to apply for this waiver, this would be the only reasonable explanation. And like I said already in my bullet points, other campuses can absolutely implement this as well. For my second case brief, I wrote about, it is called the Jane Doe versus the Chicago White Sox, back in August 25th of 2023 at a White Sox game. A woman, which, as it says, she's preferred to be left anonymous because she doesn't want to have her name roaming around in public, which is understandable. She was shot in the leg by a stray bullet in the left field bleachers, along with another 26-year-old woman being grazed in the abdomen. So two women shot by one bullet in an incident that happened in the left field bleachers. The use of firearms within the stadium is prohibited due to the league and ballpark rules, so both of them definitely see eye to eye of removing any and all firearms within proximity of the stadium. In August of 2024, 1 year later, she filed a complaint in the Cook County Circuit Court against 5 different organizations or people: the White Sox organization, the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority, the stadium owner, At Your Service LLC, and concessions and security contractor. So she filed a complaint of negligence, which we will be getting into on my next slide, against these people for basically the damages that she sustained. As we move on, the relevant law that has to do regarding this case was negligence. As I said in the last slide, just to kind of deep dive in, negligence was absolutely involved in this case, and due to carelessness and recklessness for allowing the weapon within the stadium and the situation being preventable. This situation was absolutely preventable. And on top of that, there's multiple different ways that it could have been preventable. The stadium security failures litigation was due to they had a duty to protect and create a safe atmosphere, all those people that are staffed or spectators to go watch the baseball game on that day. The breach of the duty was allowing the weapon to enter the stadium. All right, whether it was not a very good job screening, the causation was absolutely the appearance of the gun led to the 2 spectators being injured. Just bringing the gun in general was the causation, and the damages was absolutely getting shot in the leg and the abdomen. The use of the 4 steps of negligence is one of the things that we talked about in one of our modules back in, I think it was module 4 or 5. And it absolutely is stuff that we need to understand when it comes to sports law is negligence, even if it wasn't intended to do so, can still absolutely be convicted of a crime. So that being said, this was very preventable. She went about it in a way that she should not have been harmed, and she was harmed. In regard to the court ruling, there is no decision at the moment because the court date is still pending, even though it's been 2 years since then. They're still trying to piece stuff together. But at the moment, there is no suit that is set in stone off of what the final answer is. Historical context: a screening to enter a major sporting event should never be overlooked and shows that the shooting is a major reason as to why weapons should not be allowed to sporting events. They don't really bring any benefit to anything. If anything, it just causes harm. So, like that being said, these screenings, whether you go through a metal detector or you get patted down, these things should never be overlooked because the safety of a human being should never be placed second. It should always be placed first. Finally, my third and final case brief is the state of Texas versus Mahmoud Abdesalam Rababa. So, many of you probably have heard this case about the coach that was shot at a youth sporting event back in Katy, Texas. I don't really need to explain potentially for those that do know, but for those that don't, I will kind of get into the specifics and the details to kind of fill you in. So on Sunday morning of September 21st, 2025, just recently, a youth baseball complex in Katy, Texas, shots were fired reported from a neighboring property. It was a 27-year-old assistant coach that was hit. He was hit in the shoulder by gunfire. He was then airlifted to the hospital in stable condition, and at a later date, he was discharged due to having just minor injuries. They took the precautions of airlifting him just to be safe, which at the same time, no human life is less than the other. So they were just making sure that he was okay. So the footage shows people yelling to get down and remain covered because shots were ringing in from everywhere. Just wanted to make sure that they weren't hit as well. The shots actually did come from 3 men in a nearby pasture as they were practicing target shooting. So they weren't intentionally trying to shoot and harm people. They were target shooting, and the shots just kind of were within the area. The shots were actually in the direction of the ball fields that were 600 yards away, which you think that's not very close, but in reality, that's not that far away. They were shooting in the direction of the ball fields from 600 yards, and with high-powered rifles, those things can travel very, very far and very fast. So the complex did suspend the games while under investigation to figure out what exactly went down and what happened and what went on. So to relate this to our second case brief, it is categorized under the act of negligence. So they did absolutely have a duty in their end to make sure to care for other people, treat everybody with respect, so to speak. Definitely not create unintentional harm, regardless if the intent was there or not. Just stay in your lane for the most part. They did breach that duty by firing shots in the direction of other people. The causation was bullets coming in from that angle, and the damage was the man getting shot in the shoulder. So, with that being said, the relevant law that does come into play is the Texas Penal Code of 22.05, which is a deadly conduct with no intent needed in order to be tried. So it just, under an act of negligence, you don't have to have the intent in order to still be convicted due to understanding the law. So the court ruling is Mahmoud Abdesalam Rababa, who was 23, Ahmed Mawed, 21, and Mustafa Muhammad Matalga, who is also 27, have been arrested and charged with felony deadly conduct with bonds set at $100,000 each. With that being said, with them being arrested and having a $100,000 bond, a court decision has still not yet been published because of how recent it is. In regards to the historical context, this does expand the focus on public safety at sporting events, even outside of the playing field. So I know that they try to keep it safe inside the ballpark, but they need to maintain areas surrounding it so stuff like this does not happen again. The case that shows that a shift in policy to prevent from happening again and stronger legal stances on top of that to make it more severe so that, hey, even if it was an act of negligence, you need to make sure that you know what you're doing, even when necessarily you don't intend to. Okay? Or legal action could be taken to an extreme in order to prosecute you. Finally, the private property rights does not excuse this action. They were on private property, but this does not excuse what they did. And to wrap us up of case brief number 3, the legal responsibility to protect those attending these events, not only do their actions, but the people working the event have absolutely every right to make sure and keep everyone safe at all times, okay? Because it's supposed to be a safe place. All right, to tie all of this together, our key themes is, I know this may seem obvious, but all 3 incidents involve a firearm, all right? I just want to include anything and everything that has everything to tie these 3 cases together. Case briefs number 2 and number 3 were caused by accidental negligence. I discussed this already. It's just a tie together between the 2, as both of them were acts of negligence. Doesn't dismiss what they did, but at the same time, as I said many times, the intent does not need to be there. The heighten the duty of care, which is external threats, stuff that happens outside of the marked boundary of these events. The duty of care must expand outwards towards that. The criminal and civil liability, criminal could absolutely be number 3, which is the shooting of the Texas baseball coach, and the civil liability of the ballpark in the Chicago White Sox stadium when it comes to shots being fired and hitting the lady in the leg and the other in the abdomen. Also, the sensitive places doctrine, which is University of Michigan. That's a sensitive place. It's a school property. You want to keep this image. You want to keep things safe. And on top of that, to file a waiver to be excused may not be the best idea to be carrying a weapon around a place like that. Also, the growing expectations for security. There's always places to grow. There's always places to learn, always places to develop in different areas. And on top of that, expand your security to make sure and to ensure that everybody remains safe. In forms of practical tips, you got conduct external risk audits. You've got the strengthen gate security, whether it's different forms of screening to ensure that everybody entering whether it's ballpark or stadium or arena, is going in there properly equipped. Also, develop clear communication and evacuation plans to people when an incident like this were to occur, to make sure that you can get in and out very quickly and in a safe manner. Also, communicating with law enforcement. Know what your plans are, all right? Prepping, knowing what to do when things don't go the way that they're supposed to. Also, maintain a well-documented firearm policies with historical events that have kind of happened so it doesn't happen again. You know what to do when it happens and how it go about going to make sure everybody remains safe. So all 5 of these bullet points and the practical tips are kind of connected with one another. It's definitely a way to keep everything safe, which is the ultimate goal here. But every single one of these have something in common. Finally, these are my references, whether it's case 1, 2, or 3. These are my links if you would like to click on them to see where I got these case briefs from. Other than that, this is my case brief presentation. Good luck to everybody in your final week or so of the semester, and I look forward to seeing every one of your videos. Thank you and have a good day.